Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Today I have Tom Haramis joining me on the podcast. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anthony, for having me online.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'll let you introduce yourself so I don't wreck anything, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, okay. We only get one take, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm Tom Haramis. I'm a producer, film director. I guess pretty much I run a creative agency called the Mad Hatter Collective, but also I run an independent micro studio, Haramis Films, which makes film stories, documentaries, features. So I've been in this business for quite a while. So that's kind of my synopsis and summarising who I am.
Yeah. So with sort of the feature film space and the things that you do there, I saw on your LinkedIn that you've won awards at the Cannes Film Festival.
That's correct. Absolutely.
How was that experience?
I think it's overwhelming. I think, I guess for someone who's been in this industry for quite a while, I've been 2 decades now been in this commercial creative world, and my bigger ambitions has always been wanting to make film. I always believed that I was a storyteller, and so I guess working on this recent film, Fight to Live, which was a feature documentary that just came out. It kind of I felt it was a kind of validation, really, for everything that I had been learning across the years in this business, and also staying true north to really what I really wanted to do in life. Because in this industry, you get derailed, you can get knocked out, there's a lot of failures more than successes, and for me, kind of when we got that recognition in Cannes, it was kind of like, where we're kind of everything just aligned itself, and then from that, everything became a trigger of going into other festivals and being more recognised. So it's kind of it gets overwhelming, but at the same time, I feel a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, I can imagine there'll be a bit of both there. It's sort of the rewards for your hard work over years when it just finally culminates into something where other people are understanding what you've put in and recognizing it.
Absolutely. My wife would always say to me, you got to find that balance between the art and the commerce, and that is the business. It's really, it's a creative space that you're dealing with, but also you got to figure out what that commerce side looks like as well. And I've never been someone about chasing the money. I've been chasing the creative work. So kind of.
The things you enjoy.
Yeah. So kind of, and I think that it also plays a part in I guess for me really is, when you start looking at, you're trying to do something for a financial gain, then really your heart's not in the creative space. So, and for me, it's kind of like, I've since a kid, all I wanted to do was be on film sets. I was at schools. I was, producing, you do my own little theatrical plays, and so at some way, some shape or form, I was doing something. I didn't know where my career was going to go, but later, it kind of led me the way down the producing path, and from the producing allowed me down directing of what I wanted to see in life.
Okay, it's interesting that it's always been there as a passion then.
Absolutely.
So if anyone wants to check out that movie, is there anywhere we can watch it online or?
Yeah, well. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's just, it was, like I said, it played across Australia-wide in cinemas, so it's kind of out of the cinemas now. Okay. But we've just signed on to Netflix. It will be coming onto Prime, Google Play, and YouTube On Demand, which is kind of a rental or buy first, and then the gateway then goes into Netflix. So we're just kind of at the final stages of the deal terms.
Cool. So people can catch it soon.
I think somewhere in the 5-month window, it will be placed across Netflix, across Australia and New Zealand to start with.
Oh, nice. We'll check it out. So along that way, you've got the big passion for being creative and being somewhere involved in production of, like you said, theatre and movies. Yeah. The biggest skill you've probably got is like the art of storytelling. And that's really what I think we got on the episode today about. So in sort of the Mad Hatter world that you have, where you're probably dealing with creative for businesses, what's the sort of main focus there? Is it video production and then helping drive the creative and strategy direction? Or is it just taking ideas and creating content from them?
No, for me, storytelling is an art form. I believe that there's a mathematical science to it. But I also do believe that I think when creating such a story for a brand or creating a campaign, something, you need to have an objective and ask yourself, do you have an audience for what you're trying to deliver online? And I think when you can firstly understand that, I think then everything else then becomes really sort of the cosmetics and the infrastructure around the act structure of what you want to deliver and how you actually want to creatively tell the story.
So being able to tell that creative story.
Yeah.
Do you find that businesses have challenges in being able to articulate what sort of like the root of that story is?
I think, to be honest with you, Anthony, I think what I've experienced anyway over this probably last half a decade, I guess you got a lot of video content creators, and everyone wants to be a filmmaker, which is great. And I think it's kind of, I think for the people who really set out to create stories and really create some emotive stories and stories that really are compelling, I think there's a sort of a kind of a mixed, crossover. I mean, with what's actually being delivered from a marketing side, from a brand, what they're trying to achieve. They're looking at budget. They're looking at being very price driven, and sometimes when you're being price driven, but you want to have the bells and whistles of a Porsche. I mean, it kind of doesn't balance up. You can still, tell a story in a simple format, but at the same time, I think that you need to be true to yourself and true to the story that you're trying to tell in, and trying to find a bridge that helps you really create that balance from the art and commerce to actually help give the client a good return on investment and be able to deliver their brand, their story, but also at the same time, just kind of, I feel people need to be more educated why they need story in their business. And today you get everyone's, like I said, they're just reaching out to videographers who aren't really, they're kind of self-taught. Mm-hmm. Self-taught's okay. I was self-taught, then I went into film school and so on. But at the same time, I mean, when you have a business and you've put millions of dollars into it, or you're a startup, or and you have bigger goals and bigger ambitions for the business, I mean, you've set the tone. So, and you've spent all money on infrastructure, from building websites, hiring teams, trying to recruit people, trying to build a culture. But behind that foundation, and then you're kind of saying, okay, well, I've built that. Now, how do I go online? How do I get business? How do I keep propelling? So then that's where video kind of can come in, help sort of like bring in new recruits and kind of tell the story why, you want to have people come on board to actually be part of a team. Because today, employers aren't the employer anymore. It's the employee who's the employer, who's checking out the employer and saying, hey, is this the right fit for me? Is this the right company I want to be in? And so you're starting to educate people around storytelling, or why, it's great why we do what we do, what makes us stand out, what's our point of difference, what's our USP, our unique selling point, and just all these, what's our culture, all these little factors that kick in. So when you look at an overarching brand story, that's why you need a story in your business to actually, not one is to hold the retention rate of great employees or your assets, and also at the same time when your prospects and your customers are looking in from a window outside in, they're kind of saying, wow, these are the guys that are really aligned for us, and I think they'll be a great fit. Where if you kind of cheapen your output of your marketing, you've spent all this money, now you haven't got no money for marketing to do what your business should be doing. Sure. I mean, that's another conversation to have, and I think that's where a lot of businesses kind of fail. They've kind of built the house, yep, and say, all right, no, let's But when it comes to production, and we're kind of at that very kind of last leg before anything else, and you kind of say, oh well, it's going to kind of come in and to tell your story, it's going to cost you X, Y, Z. Oh, we haven't got that budget. We only got this much budget. So it's all these things that I've realised over the years. is kind of, something that if I would be to kind of educate people and say you need to engage creatives earlier in the early side as you're building out, because and by engaging creatives to come in earlier, it can obviously cost you a lot less, because you can also give them a really good fresh perspective around story and give them some ideas and strategies really of how to go to market with content. And that's really important, from taking one big wide story, then cutting that up into little cut downs, and then building that into the funnel, which leads into the larger story.
Okay. So do you find that businesses, if they leave it late, like the ideal case they shouldn't, but when they do leave it late, is it that they've been too busy, like you said, focusing on trying to build a business, and they don't know how to articulate what their why is?
Yeah.
Or at that point, do they know normally?
I think there's a bit of both. I mean, I think when you need video, I think if you're at that stage where you at somewhere down the track need video late after your business has been built, I think there's some pain points there that have asked you to kind of start discovering why you need video. You're obviously not making enough sales. You're probably losing staff. You're losing customers. Whatever that is. Maybe it's your frontline not bringing sales, and it's all these little things that later on, go into your marketing efforts, right? To keep the retention.
Yep. Correct.
So if you kind of reverse engineer that back, I think that I think from again, I'm only speaking from my fresh perspective and businesses I've dealt, is you get a lot of business. It's kind of a semi. You get a lot of businesses who are kind of at that kind of end where they need some marketing, but they don't know where they're going. They're kind of lost. Which you said, what's your greater why? Why did you go into business, and what kind of story are we trying to tell? But then you got the other side who are really going against the hurricane, who are saying, look, we want to keep pushing content, we want to be the thought leader, and if it's going to take us XYZ in dollars and XYZ in getting a certain clips out there and getting a social buzz and building an audience, well, so let that be done. That's what a thought leader is actually creating noise and cutting through all the white noise, because there's a lot of white noise on social.
Yeah, there's so much, especially the last, like you said, 5 years.
I'm like, it's just, you go through social and like, I'm like over it. It's kind of like, it's just like, where is storytelling gone? Where is it? If you look back in the day of the art of filmmaking compared to how films were made back in the 80s and 90s, there was a narrative, there was a story, and that drove people, and they got people on seats in cinemas, and you walked out of there, whether you came out of watching a Van Damme movie, you felt like you wanted to be Van Damme, whatever that was, right?
Take over the world.
Yeah, right. So there was story, there was a narrative behind that. But today it's kind of left. It's kind of shot out the window, and now there is kind of no story. It's all these fast cuts. You got these ads. You got these Uber ads that are coming out, and in terms of fast cookie cutter ones. I mean, they're trying to get to an audience. They're probably thinking their market is Gen Z today. The Gen Zs haven't really got a retention span. They're kind of moving forward, next, give me something. So it's all these factors, and like I said, storytelling has always been there, and I think we've really got to pull it back in and start really helping re-educate this into businesses, into why they should be starting to create some great stories around their whole business that they built, that they've spent time and years trying to get to where they wanted to. Yeah.
So you mentioned there, like, probably two things. I'll touch on the thought leader in a second, but like on the movie side in that space, what I've noticed as a fan of movies is, so if you just say, look at Marvel, big string of hits up until the Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, like those were very story driven, over 20 movies, all these different pieces.
Yeah.
Since then, it's like cookie cutter type of movie that just keeps getting repeated because they can just rinse and repeat a quick thing, I think. The same story almost happens every time. Someone comes in, new powers, fights a bad guy that's almost identical to them, but bad version, and then end of the movie.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of in the film business. It's kind of the saying of when they're looking to produce some sort of new movie, give me the same but different.
Yeah,
that's really what they want. So so when you look at the Avengers, I mean, it had its own kind of little independent stories and little narratives going through. But like I said, moving, where we are right now, where, I mean, you're watching now a 2 to 3 hour movie, and there's probably 10 minutes worth of dialogue.
Yeah.
And you're
then,
kind of like, oh, where's it all gone? It's all gone in, effects and animation and all
special
this
effects, and then everything ends up being very quick cuts. The action's hard to follow. They've gotten like Bourne Identity to the extreme, because I think that was the first main one that brought that in.
So,
but then, so then that probably ties into, right, being a thought leader is something that I think a lot of businesses try to follow. I learned that term from Gary Vee, if you're familiar with him. He's like was it jab, 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 hook? Just keep giving information.
Absolutely.
Then try and sell. So we're just jabbing forever. We don't really sell in the way we do our content. But that probably lines up to how you said, like, that Gen Z, just short attention span, lots of content keep coming through. How do you cut through that noise when you're trying to make that content, especially if you're being a thought leader, you're sharing information? Well, when I share information, there's not normally I don't do it with a story behind it, which is probably the problem. I'm just, this is something you need to know because you're coming into this industry and you don't know anything about it.
Right. I think you build, as Richard Branson, get the job in and deal with the problem later, and it kind of in a way of, you just keep building out the business. And I know a lot of friends who have run successful businesses. It's kind of, they're building and they're, I mean, as they're building the vision as they're going. They haven't really mapped out that greater why, but it kind of works. I mean, there's definitely two ways. But I think when you come back into the Gen Zs, I mean, like I said, I think that first it's kind of really looking at your business inside. I would always start with, and asking questions. Who is our demographic? Who is our audience? Who are we trying to sell our services to? Who are the people that we want? Because Gen Z, I mean, for me, it's not a business. I feel unless you've got a product online and you've got some sort of, hoodie, you're trying to sell some sort of, apparel. I mean, there's your kind of Gen Zs moving into fast moving consumer goods. But if you're running kind of a bigger, large business and you're dealing with a more mature audience, I mean, then Gen Zs aren't really audience. You shouldn't have to really worry about that. And I think for me, it's really, and hence I think that's why it's so important, is when you understand who your audience is, you can reverse engineer everything around that and know who you're talking to and start creating content specifically for them. Where if I was to put a story, beautiful narrative story piece in front of a Gen Z for 5 minutes, that'd be boring after 30 seconds. Let's get it off. Right. And my daughter's Gen Z, Yep. I mean, so and that's okay. But like I said, every business or every brand has a different audience. And if you kind of understand who that is, then, the world's your oyster, because then you can start framing everything up around that. And I think coming off, which I'll tie back into Fight to Live. I mean, it was a feature film documentary against domestic violence. I mean, but I already knew there was an audience there, but I also knew there was a crossover audience there. So, I mean, it's, again, you just got to really figure out who you're speaking to and work around that.
Yeah, it's really being clear on, all right, you got into business for X reasons. Who are those people that you're trying to help? And then always tailoring everything around that focus, I guess. Which is easy to forget at times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, as a business owner, you're chasing that next dollar. You're trying to chase the hustle. You're trying to get that next sale in, and really need these guys trying to sell you their content. But really, it's a marriage. Really, it's kind of like, our success becomes their success. If we help you build content and create some beautiful narrative pieces and stories around that helps you gives you become that thought leader, then your success becomes our success. And then when you're making obviously a lot more money, then you're going to funnel that back into us. So you really got to see, and I think for a lot of, businesses, it's kind of also looking at, I mean, like I said, I've been in this business. I'm not only just a content creator from a producing and directing side. I'm a business owner. And I've gone through my pain, and I've gone through my pain points. I understand what it takes to hire employees or to let go of employees or to get subcontractors in, and understand the money that you've got to bring into the business to keep the overheads going. It's all these factors that, every day you're paying everyone else out before you're paying yourself as a business owner, right?
Yep.
And I think that so when you kind of like take that approach, you kind of say, well, who do I want to align with from a, if someone was to brand me or get my content out there, who would be that kind of person? Is it is it that Gen Z young guy or young girl who's come out, who's got a mum and dad's video camera and is going to just go around and shoot some run and gun stuff that really isn't going anywhere without an objective, but they're just shooting some, and it may look good for the business. And it's great cuts, some great transitions, but really it's not again serving purpose. Or do we want someone who's got the experience, who can relate to having a business and can relate to understanding, if I got only $10,000 or $20,000 marketing budget, I know that they would understand just as much how important that their marketing dollars are for us to get our next sales. So that's
because you can relate more then.
Yeah. So that for me really is all about kind of understanding who your creators are and that kind of the experience. And the more experience they have, then the more obviously they're going to bring value to your business. If that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because once you can relate, it's a lot easier to then draw suggestions and ideas that, all right, I've got this idea, may relate to you, let me throw it out, rather than just throwing something completely out of left field, which is random.
And how can you talk to a young person about, what do you think about my business or this and that? And really, they've never had a business before. They've never run. They just understand how to cut something, shoot and edit. You know what I mean? So these are the things that I think businesses should start really looking out for, is looking at finding people that they can align themselves with and really just grow with them as well. It's not so much about the ad hoc transaction. It's about, how do you help build content out for them to bring them the dollars back in.
Do you see a difference in the content from just talking about, all right, my business does X, or bringing in like a personal story and bringing in like, all right, now there's a face to the business and you can make that personal connection? Yeah,
I think absolutely. I think when running a business, there's two ways about it. When you're the thought leader and you're positioning yourself as that subject matter expert, and you're on top of the line, you have to that means you have to be constantly, regularly updating content. It means if every Monday you're going to put a podcast out, well, so Monday, let that podcast be, because that's what a thought leader does, is going to keep pushing out that content, right? As yourself, as a thought leader, you've got regular podcast shows, you've got consistency, so you're the subject matter expert in your own space, right? But if you're looking to kind of scale up and grow, you need to kind of pull back a little bit, because you can't also be everywhere at the same time. Yes, you can be that subject matter expert, but if I want to keep growing my business, and which I've tried to dabble on the both sides, where it's kind of like you got clients who only want to deal with Tom, and it's like, at the same time, it's for me, if I really want to take on other projects or kind of scale up, it's hard, because your capacity and your creative and your time against one person's project, you needs to be given 110%. So therefore, it's really hard to kind of scale up and have many multiple projects go on, such as a big wide agency, to actually serve that. So I think from a subject matter expert, from delivering content, I think it's fantastic, because now it builds trust, it builds authenticity, and it helps people feel a genuine connection. Say, yeah, this guy is like me, or this woman is like me, whatever that is, right? I mean, everyone's going to have something that they can relate to, and when you become more relatable, then obviously that becomes a genuine a relationship that you build, whether inside that online world or outside that world. But I think that it's just, again, I think for any business, looking at just figuring out who you are as an entity and who you are as a business, and do you want to be that driver who's driving every day that online content, and which means you've got to start curating content, means you've got to start structuring, scripting, really thinking about the audience, the questions, and really be there top of line, and constantly be addressing all these. And that's okay. That's great, because there's a lot of people that do that and make a lot of money and are successful at it. Could be online coaches, could be whatever that is, right? Yep. But then there's a flip side is, well, if Anthony wants to go on a break for about 8 weeks and take his family, and still wants to run his business.
Yep.
I mean, but everyone wants to not still have Anthony, then that becomes who's managing that side. If I want to go away, I want to take a break, I want to start a new venture. So it's kind of all these things that you
weigh
need
that up and understand. Yeah, do you want to be the face of the business, or have the business without a faceless business almost?
And for me, I think for me, what I realised what worked really well. I mean, like I said, over the years, everyone wanted to deal with me personally, and I still do with a lot of my clients one-on-one. I love that genuine experience, but I'm not that thought leader who's going to be going out there constantly pushing out blogs and vlogs, and that's just not me. I'm a people's person. I'm someone who, we'll get in a room, we'll talk, we'll hash it out, we'll, brainstorm, and then you'll hear me on the phone. And so I'm that kind of people's person, right? Where other people have a different approach. But I think that, but honestly, I think that there's just, like I said, if you're really thinking about, growing out a business, you just got to really think about who, where do you see yourself? What is your kind of, 1 to 5 year plan within the business, and you can still be in the business, because with the agency I run now, I deal with a lot of creatives, which we're a talent agency, which I got access to directors and screen editors and a whole bunch of other producers, which is great. And I'm still part of the creative process, but I'm not so heavily involved in what I used to be, unless I'm specifically want to be involved.
Yeah, and you're bringing in direction and probably top level ideas.
Yeah, and when and when you can be in that position, then you can start looking at it from a holistic view. You're saying, "Oh, this is great. Now I can really look at this project even more so," because sometimes you're in that project, and sometimes you're just overwhelmed, creative, strategies. You got some stress levels kick in, and everyone does, right? So I think that it's also just a good point of allowing you to plug in and plug out, and I think that's a really good model to kind of be in to kind of scale up. Yeah,
you definitely need that to get to scale. Otherwise, you can't do everything, and you can't wear every hat at once. So you have to pick and choose where.
Absolutely. Do you want a little niche market? Do you want to be turning over $500,000 a year, and then you can be the subject matter expert and be doing that kind of solopreneur route, or are you going to be that? Like I said, you're going to be that kind of someone who can, comes into the room with authority and comes out at the same time. And I think that can be a better conversation to have.
Yeah, I think definitely. So for any, say, businesses or startups out there looking at, like, all right, we may not have a budget to start anything yet, but like, what do you suggest for them just to be able to start to get the ball rolling? Because starting is always the hardest part for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I honestly think that I would honestly suggest that they would get a bit of a pen and paper and ask themselves what their pain points are, what their problem is within the business, if they have the pain points, or if they haven't got a budget. What can they do? And I mean, today you got so many tools online. You got ChatGPT. I mean, throw something in there, and it will spit something back out. And you don't necessarily need to take the actual the word for word, but it gives you a good structure. Something that you would normally pay a creative copywriter or a screenwriter to help you write that, and unfortunately, it's just saving you money. It's kind of like jump online, punch out some scripts, and get your phone and basically get a little teleprompter app, and start practicing. Start just be yourself, and it's okay to, excuse me, what I'm going to say fuck up. It's okay. Yeah, it really is. I mean, we're human. No one's perfect, and I think sometimes people want to see the authenticity, the rawness. That's what I relate to. I mean, if I see someone talk and when it's so polished, I'm like, okay, maybe not. And the polish can come from a great campaign when you've got money and budgets to spend and do a nice, great story. That's great, but when you're kind of trying to propel your business and trying to move forward, I'd be starting like within saying what tools can I get access to that's free, or look at bringing in a consultant, whether it's a producer or a storyteller, to kind of say, hey, how I don't have a budget, but what could I do, and how can I then find a nice sort of structure around my content, and what should I be doing? What should be the techniques? How should I buy it? Just all these little things, right? And I think when you can get that kind of information, then that can help you kind of start creating content, and then just be regular with your content, because, like I said, there's a lot of white noise out there, and there's so much content that by the time you've uploaded your content, there's another piece of content that's already gone from somebody else. 100 pieces. Yeah, right. So you need to play the long game, and for me, it's I always kind of tell my clients this. I go, if you're looking for that sprint, that ain't me. I'm not that person that I'm not. If you want that quick hit, go somewhere else. I want to think about what your long-term game is, and think of the marathon, right? What is it that you want to achieve? And then when you know that, then you can start slowly, saying, okay, year one, at least I want to be able to put out, four mini, vlogs a week, or podcasts or something. Just build an audience, because what happens is you got, and this is a really good tip, is kind of like, you're going to spend money on if someone approaches you to spend money on a big campaign or a big brand video, and you haven't got an audience yet, it doesn't, for me, serve purpose just yet.
Yeah, just putting things out there with that
audience. You have to build an audience. You've got to get some numbers behind that. And then when you can start trickling and getting an audience who can start commenting and start being your advocates around the messaging that you're telling, then you can start telling a bit more larger stories within your brand. So I think because, and like I said, or you can go the reverse engineer way, which is build your brand, build your campaign, do a whole bunch of cut downs, but before you release that, build an audience, do a drip feed, keep pushing content out there. So I think definitely for people, for a lot of startups, I mean, I would ask the question is, what's your product, mean to you, or your business mean to you? What's a customer? Here's a better way of saying it. What is a customer worth to you?
Mm-hmm.
And
what's their lifetime value, and
right,
understand that.
Right, because I've gone into so many rooms and I've asked, by prospects, what does that customer look like to you, and what does that lifetime? And when we address that, and it's kind of like, okay, but so you want a customer at this value, at this dollar, but at the same time you don't want to be spending here, then how are you going to get that customer?
Yep. Yeah, you got to understand the numbers and how to play.
Yeah, so it's and that's where if you're in a coffee business, it's very different.
Yep. It's
a $4 coffee. They're punching out coffees, right? It's low, so you need something very low volume based. So again, it's all these things that really come into play. But if you've got, like I said, if you've got a great product, a product or business, my advice is, if they do, don't skimp on your marketing. Just get some, try to get some seed funding, try to get some investment, try to get some people to chip in some money to get you to the next stage, to help you build an audience, build a social, get a social media agency involved, get your channels going, get oil in the machine, get that moving.
And just start yourself if you have to, just to get something moving and get into that habit of being consistent. That's what it comes down to.
And here's the thing, Anthony, here's the thing. I years and years ago would depend on so many of my creatives, and it kind of, and I realized I couldn't hold down a creative, because creatives are like, they're going to fly. They're going to get onto another project, they're going to go somewhere else, and you just can't hold them great people down. And then I started realizing with my business, like, oh, is that a problem in my business? If they go, is that going to be a problem in my business today? How do I solve that problem? So then I really started being hands-on and learning a lot more and really understanding more, educating myself around what they were doing. Because then when I could do that, then I knew that if someone checked out of the vessel, that's okay. I can step in. I can edit. I can come in and I can run my own ads. You have to educate yourself.
Yeah.
You can't expect people. You can't expect as an entrepreneur or a business owner who's just starting up to just sit back and put your hands back and say, you know what, here's my website. I'm online. And have the facade that you're doing great. But behind, you're doing shit.
Yeah, unless you got shitloads of money to just cover things and not worry about it and big investment, then you can't do that.
You got to be very hands-on, and that means very many multiple hats. And that for me, success is not one straight line. It's kind of up, down, and it's, fail on this, learn that, learn and fail. I mean, I've failed so many times in my some of my entrepreneurs in running businesses that I've done, but I've learned from them, and that's allowed me to succeed in other ventures that I've done. So you got to just be able to fail and say that's okay.
Learn something from it. Otherwise,
you learn from it, and you take that away, and then, like I said, that will allow you kind of say, right, now I know what I shouldn't do or what I should do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so that's really important. So I think for these, definitely startups is really just you got to have, and this is the most important, I think, which I'm going to say is knowing how to time manage yourself.
Yep.
Because you need to set out your block out rules, and you need to say, okay, from the hours of 7 to 8, I'm going to be doing some, prospecting, or from, 9 to 10, I'm going to be doing some creative content. From 10 to, it's got to be repeat, because if you have to, if you look at
put the effort in the right place.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of it's the research is out there. If you look at the Michael Jordans, and if you look at the all these amazing athletes that have who have kind of been at the most peak in their career, it's been repetitive, repeat. Get up in the morning, 6 o'clock, train. It's the same thing day in, day out. There's nothing fancy about it. It really isn't. But by the consistency and the repetitiveness of it, then it will start paying dividends. Where if you're kind of displaced and all over the place, I'd be looking at fine tuning that, because if you get that right, then everything else is just really going to come, naturally and secondary. Everything else will be a complement around your business.
Yeah, it just becomes like that muscle memory, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's some really good tips there for that anyone listening can probably take on and understand. All right, be clear on what you want to do, how you want to do it, where you're going to spend your time, understand your customers, and be able to send the right message to them. Once you know who they are, you can then talk to them. There's some really great points probably to finish up on there, just taking note of what the time is. Tom, if anyone wants to reach out, how can they do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They could probably just reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. They can find me through my LinkedIn profile, or they can just, reach me on my email, tom@madhattercollective.com.au. They can even reach out to me on my cell, but usually I'd give my cell at a later stage. But no, look, I mean, just reach out to me. Like I said, if anyone, I'm always. I'm always rooting for the underdog. I really am. I've been that underdog myself, and when I've tried to run businesses and do this and try to make something, and I've seen success on the other side, but I've seen the fucking hard work that it takes
goes into it
to get there. And I think whenever someone is running a business or doing something, I mean, I really take my hat off, and I'm always rooting for them. So yeah, so they can reach out to me. I'm very approachable. I'm very responsive in terms of my replies. So you're not going to wait a whole week to hit back to me.
No problems. We'll put those links in the show notes.
Yeah,
and hopefully
absolutely.
you can get some people reaching out.
Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate it, Anthony. Awesome. We'll talk outside this as well.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that, Tom, and appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, man. Cheers.
Thank you.